Welcome back to the Fit Minute Podcast, where we talk all things health, fitness, and lifestyle. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Gabby Mazar, and on today's show, I have Tracy Slepcevic. She is an integrative health coach. She's the founder of Pure Health LLC, and she's the author of Warrior Mom: A Mother's Journey in Healing Her Son with Autism. So, welcome to the show today, Tracy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, let me just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your journey with your son with autism.
Okay, so I initially was going to school for psychology, and then my son was diagnosed with autism. And so I quickly changed my tune once I was educated on, addressing the underlying conditions associated with autism so my child could function. It did take me over 2.5 years to try and figure out what was wrong with my son. So I was kind of, pushed around the system, and pediatrician was just telling me how everything was just so normal, and two preschools telling me my kids got special needs, they can't care for them, and Harbor Regional Center who lost my paperwork. So it was quite the journey. And I didn't want parents to have to go through what I went through, because I find that early intervention is key. The younger they are, as their little brains are developing, the better chance of being able to get some functionality out of them. So
And how old was he when he was diagnosed?
So he was diagnosed when he was about 3.5 years old, but I started to see a regression when he was about 1.
Okay.
And then he started to lose speech, motor skills, some cognitive function. And then my kid just kind of went into a little bubble, and it was like I couldn't connect with him.
So, from there, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So from there, once he turned about 4, you started to do more research and try and figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah. So I always say there was definitely divine intervention in my life. So I say God always sent me angels whenever I was at my lowest point and I just didn't know what to do. And on the day that Noah was diagnosed, I had to head back to the office. And walking down the hallway, I saw my naturopathic doctor. His office was adjacent to ours. And he saw me crying, and he reached out, he gave me a hug, and he's like, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, Noah was diagnosed with autism." And he looks at me and he steps back and he's like, "Noah's going to be fine. I want you to go home and I want you to do your homework, because I feel like kids these days are making great progress with biomedical intervention." Now, at that time, I knew a lot about nutrition, as I had studied most of it in my 20s, but I knew nothing about biomedical intervention, which is truly just addressing those underlying conditions and using a lot of non-traditional therapies for healing. And one of those was really addressing the gut and the gut-brain connection. So our gut is connected to our brain via our nervous system. So if you have a messed up gut, which a lot of these kids do, then it's definitely going to affect you neurologically. And Noah had been on a lot of antibiotics most of his childhood from ear infections. And so when you see that distended belly, the dark circles around the eyes, the paleness, can't sleep, self-injurious behavior, a lot of those things are really related to gut issues. And once you address those gut issues, a lot of times, not every time, you will get, speech that will come back from these kids. A lot of the behaviors will start to go away, and you'll see that they'll start to come to a little bit. And we did do a lot of other things. We implemented some supplements that the doctor recommended. We did hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which I wouldn't recommend for a child unless they have tubes in their ears. So Noah had tubes because of all the ear infections, because going into a dive chamber, you have to be able to clear your ears, or it's, you can blow an eardrum. So I always caution on that side. And other than that, we threw everything at that kid but the kitchen sink. We traveled to the Ukraine for stem cell therapy when he was 7. That really helped him regain his motor skills. And then over the years, I really always wanted to write a book to educate parents. So I had been a parent advocate for a lot of different organizations. And I felt like I was saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm like, wow, I just need to write it all in a book. And then people have it right there for them. So as I saw, COVID coming about, autism started to increase. So recently the rate of autism has gone up to 1 in 36 from 1 in 44. And the CDC pretty much bases it on 8-year-olds and 8-year-olds only. So it really doesn't address the full, age range of children between 2 and 18. So you could probably say somewhere around, 1 in 20, 1 in 25 kids probably are on the spectrum. And experts are saying that by 2030, we're going to see that the autism rate is going to be about 1 in 2. So I felt the need to really reach out to those parents, and I wanted to reach as many parents as I possibly could. So here again, another angel comes into my life, and she had just wrote a book and she's telling me all about it. And I'm like, well, I've always wanted to write a book about my story with Noah. And she's like, well, what stopped you? So I went home immediately and just started writing. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea of structure. So I started to take some online courses and really dove deep in how to lay it out. And that itself was a journey and a process, but it landed me in a really good spot as to where I found a great literary coach, she ended up being my editor, and a wonderful, publishing company that I ended up working with. So today, as of last week, Tuesday, in it being Autism Awareness Month, we released my paperback of Warrior Mom. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, that's very exciting. So before I get to your book, I wanna ask you a few questions about some of the things that you saw with your son. So with Noah, when you would do some of these treatments, what were kind of some of the results you would see with him? So let's say you would do the hyperbaric chamber or some of the treatments. I know, especially with food, autistic kids tend to have a lot of like tactile issues, and like with food issues, they only eat certain foods like chicken nuggets and French fries, and because they're very sensitive to touch and taste. So how did you handle those types of issues, and what kind of results did you see when you did certain treatments?
So I always say you are what you eat, and food is a big thing. And yes, they do have a lot of sensory issues, but every kid is different. So Noah would take and he would shove a bunch of food in his mouth, and he'd look like a great big chipmunk. And then he would just be like, until he finally like swallowed it all. Now, people used to always be like, well, aren't you afraid that he's going to choke? And I'm like, well, he hasn't choked yet. So, um, so yes, they're picky eaters. And unfortunately, this is one of those big challenges that parents have. And what I tell parents is, number one, you're the parent. So you get to be the parent. You get to tell them what to do, what not to do. A lot of times we allow, and I'm guilty, our children to dictate how we parent. So a child is not going to starve themselves. They will get hungry to a point as to where they will eat what's in front of them. And That's not easy. Is to sit there and watch your kid not eat, and to a point as to where they're starving, and then they'll eventually eat what you put in front of them. And so also, when you talk about what kind of benefits did I have from all the different types of treatments that we did. So with diet and supplementation, I found that his speech and his awareness started to come back. So a kid who had echolalia, so at first he lost all his speech, and then I would start working with him with different cards and pictures and stuff like that, where he developed echolalia, which means he could process the last word that came out of your mouth and he would repeat it. But he didn't really understand what it was that he was saying. So I could be like, Noah, say the color red. And that's really all he could comprehend. But he couldn't put 2 or 3 words together. So after just a couple weeks of implementing a very strict diet, and I don't mean every now and then, I was extremely strict on no gluten, no dairy, no soy. And eventually it led to no sugar. So no sugar or refined carbs. And I just started to see a lot of speech come out of him. He was able to sleep more. Now, a parent who barely slept for, 4 years of their child's life, it's like an aha. It's so wonderful when your kid can sleep through the night. And that's because they're not in pain. So a lot of times you'll see them do self-injurious behaviors. Mm-hmm. And with the diet, the self-injurious behaviors will go away, because these foods can leak into the bloodstream and they act as like opiates on the brain. So the kids don't feel any pain. So my kid had a really high tolerance for pain. And then as we moved on to other things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, I can tell you a lot of behaviors started to diminish from doing hyperbarics. And hyperbarics has, that benefit as to where it takes down inflammation in the body. As he got a little older and he was about 7 years old, we went to the Ukraine for stem cell therapy, and there's different types of stem cell therapy. So we did do fetal stem cell therapy. And so for 2 days, Noah received an IV of stem cells, and then they did like a couple injections into the stomach. And literally, I can't even begin to tell you, overnight almost, the kid's motor skills skyrocketed. Now, this was a kid who couldn't hang on to a monkey bar, let alone go across the monkey bars. So when we got back, from the Ukraine, we ended up going to the Renaissance Fair. Now, Noah loved trying to climb rock walls. Now, he usually couldn't get past the first couple, climbs as to where you could still reach him. And he looks at this big, huge rock wall and he's like, Mom, I want to try it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he gets on there and he literally flies up this rock wall and rings the bell. And it was a really, really tall rock wall, not the short ones. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I fell to my knees and I was like in tears. I was calling my husband. I'm like, you won't believe what just happened. And then within a month, Noah graduated from occupational therapy. And they were really working on, I had a list of things that he had to be able to do for me to let go of that service through the school district. And one of them was he had to go across the monkey bars. So he was going back and forth across the monkey bars. He could balance on the half moon ball, which he could never do before. He could balance on a swing and swing himself. He could tie his shoes, which he really didn't have the coordination before to do. And so all of this was kind of like an overnight thing. So I feel like strength, coordination, balance, a lot of those I got back from him doing stem cell therapy. It did help with like any type of cognitive improvement. I don't really feel that was beneficial to that, towards that. But as they grow a little bit older, and Noah also suffered from reoccurring PANDAS. Now, PANDAS is like high levels of strep in the blood. It stands for pediatric autoimmune neuropsychotropic disorder associated with strep. And this can cause major inflammation on the brain. So a lot of kids that have tics, Tourette's, behavioral symptoms, ADD, ADHD, autism, anything behavioral related, usually has a diagnosis of PANDAS. Now, PANDAS can cause further neurological damage, and if it's severe enough, can even cause death. So, the Western medical community doesn't even know what PANDAS is.
Yeah, I've never heard of it before.
What's PANDAS? So this is one of those underlying conditions. So I always tell parents, first and foremost, you must believe. You must have a clear intention and a belief that your child will fully function someday. Will they get rid of their autism diagnosis? I don't know, but my main goal was to make sure that Noah could function in society. And that was the most important thing to me. So I was ecstatic. He was making such great progress, and he was doing so well with all the different types of treatments that we were doing. But for PANDAS, a really big one, because a lot of times the traditional treatment for PANDAS is more antibiotics and IVIG treatments. And IV immunoglobulins is something that will boost your immune system. Your body naturally has them. And as we have that oxidative stress, it breaks them down. So what the goal of it is to build those blocks back up, right? So we can fight off infections and so on and so forth. But I found it was very expensive, but I didn't find that was something that worked really well. But I do find that IV ozone therapy works tremendous for PANDAS. So that was one of the things. We've done high dose vitamin C for it and all different types of IVs and boosting the immune system. It definitely has kept Noah, because he's got a lot of autoimmune issues, from getting sick. Like during COVID, we were not vaccinated, and none of us got COVID, but we were going in for immune boosting IVs. We were going in for like a vitamin C drip with a glutathione, and which will detox the body. And we literally stayed healthy while everyone around us was getting really sick. And we actually were still traveling and going outside and exercising. And exercise is super important. So even though my kid doesn't like to exercise, I literally am like, you get to walk to the bottom of the hill and back up the hill. And then he works out with a trainer 3 days a week, because they're in front of a computer too much these days. Mm-hmm. And they're not mobile. When we were kids, we were outside playing and having fun, and we didn't have, cell phones or computers or anything to keep us sedentary. So that's super important, is kids being active, because I found that during COVID, I saw a bit of regression from Noah, and it mainly like social and anxiety and depression, because he was sitting in a dark room and he was playing video games with his friends or just doing his online schooling, and he would never open his windows. So sunlight is really, really important, because it boosts those serotonin levels, as you know. Mm-hmm. So it's been a learning curve the whole way. And then I ended up going back to school for alternative medicine and got my certification as a health coach, and just really started working with not just kids on the spectrum or parents with children with special needs, but also with people who had underlying conditions, and to address those underlying conditions with, eating proper food and exercise and, a combination of things, which I feel is truly important.
Yeah, all of those things. I mean, obviously they are very important. We know that. We do know that. We are finding out more and more and more how important that gut connection is, and how leaky gut can affect us in so many different ways. But so you decided to write this book because you wanted to connect with other people and help them. But tell us a little bit more about it. Some of the important insights that you gained from your research, some of the important insights that you gained maybe from writing this book, or just in general from things that you've learned from all of the things that you've done to help Noah.
So at the beginning, when I got an autism diagnosis, I mean, I remember just feeling very lost and alone. And the number one thing that truly assisted me on my journey was reading books, was going to parent meetings, going to conferences, doing all those things that people should be doing today. When you Google healing autism, you're not really going to get what I got back in 2008 and 2009. You're going to get a whole different story. A lot's been scrubbed and pushed under, and like, big pharma owns it all. So I, laid it out in a book as to everything I felt I needed back then during that time, once Noah was diagnosed. So I laid it out in 3 parts. The first part is truly a story of inspiration and hope. I mean, we went through, if we could have gone through it during that time, we definitely did. We lost our business and our home because my husband fights big insurance, and eventually they fight back. He exposed the insurance companies and the state of California insurance commissioner at the time for fraud and collusion on smoke and ash claims. And they did a smear campaign. He wound up on the front page of the LA Times. And there went the business, there went, our income. And so then my husband was just doing consulting jobs, and I was picking stuff up and selling it. And so the number one excuse I get from parents is, oh, I can't afford it, it's expensive. Well, I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together at the time. Our house was in foreclosure. We weren't making house payments. And if I could pick it up and put it on eBay, it was gone. And I bartered for treatments. I'm like, listen, I will do your marketing. I will work your front desk. I'll even scrub your toilets, whatever it is that you want me to do. I'll do it if I can get this treatment for my son. And if you set that clear intention, I believe you can create anything. So I always say, where the mind goes, the energy flows. It's always a beautiful saying because it works so well. So I wanted people to have that hope and inspiration that anything's possible, even when you're at your lowest and you have nothing. So, and then part 2 is really like a resource guide, or what do you do if you think your kid could have special needs, not just autism. It's a wide spectrum of disabilities. So what are these questions you should be asking yourself? And where do you go? Nobody gave me that guidebook of where do I go and what do I do prior to the age of 3, after the age of 3. I was learning all these things on my road, and I kid you not, God just sent me angels. Every time I was at like my wit's end, somebody would come into my life to lead me in that right direction, to guide my path. And then part 3 is really all about the different healing modalities, really digging deep into nutrition. It's so simple. And if somebody tells me that they can't afford to eat real food, I'm going to tell them to go plant a garden. It's super cheap and vegetables grow fast. I swear to you. I've learned this through the whole pandemic that the coolest thing I've ever done is like grow a garden, because I'm like, oh, I don't have a green thumb. I can't do this, whatever. And then out comes all these vegetables, so much that I'm giving them away to my neighbors because it's growing so fast, right?
And you get excited about it too.
I know.
Everything that grows,
And
it's like exciting, and then you get 8,000 squash, and the last thing you want to eat is another squash.
me and zucchini, I was making zucchini bread, zucchini pasta, zucchini casserole. I swear everything had zucchini in it.
Mm-hmm.
But so these are the different things you can do. And then I do have, a chapter on vaccines that doesn't go into the controversy of vaccines, but truly gives facts and history about vaccines. And so you can make an educated decision for yourself and for your child, whether or not it's safe to vaccinate. I'm not that doctor. I'm not that one that's going to tell somebody to do something or not do something. I'm going to say, if it was me, this is what I would do. And, all of that was kind of summed up in one book. So if somebody reads it, they can kind of take notes and they can have everything that they need there. So I found that as I was mentoring parents, that I was repeating myself. So I kind of just rolled it all in a book. And then I'm like, if anybody ever has questions, reach out to me after you read it. So those questions that weren't answered in the book, then I'm happy to answer those questions for you or refer you to the person who can answer them. But number one, really the step in the right direction is to find a good functional medicine doctor for yourself or for your child with special needs. If it's a kid with special needs, then there is medmaps.org. So it's Medical Association for Pediatric Special Needs. You can find a doctor that does specialize in treating kids with special needs and addressing those underlying conditions so they can have a baseline of what to go off of and which direction to go in. Because if I didn't have that, then I probably would have been all over the map just trying to figure it out, as I sort of already was.
And finding a physician that you trust. I think too many times we find one, and even if we don't really love them, we stick with them because we're too afraid to find another one. But finding a doctor, finding one that you trust, and finding one that you feel has your best interests in mind, because you want to know, or even get more than one opinion. Get 10 opinions if you need. Because if you get 10 opinions and three of them are over here and three of them over here, but the rest of them are in the middle and all the same, then those ones in the middle are probably the ones that are the best, that are correct, or are, the ones that you should go with. And trust your gut when you're finding a physician, and when you're looking for the answers that you're searching for, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I literally was in a ball of tears finding Noah a physician because we didn't have a lot of money. And so we found, back then they called them DAN doctors. They went under Defeat Autism now. Now they're called MAPS doctors. So you do have those doctors that are going to price gouge you. They
Mm-hmm.
truly are. But I had a very wonderful friend, the same man who led me in the right direction of healing. He was one of those angels that came into my life, my naturopathic doctor at the time, who assisted me and called. I was in Redondo Beach at the time. He called all the DAN doctors in LA County and asked them, what's your protocol? What labs do you go through? What kind of tests are you running? And he did all of this for me. So I was truly blessed in that aspect. I did put it in the book as to what type of questions, you should be, asking to assist them in that, on that journey. But I truly got lucky. Till this day, I still thank that man for all the wonderful things that he did for me during that time to guide me, because I did find the right doctor. And I have parents that are like, well, this doctor didn't really sit well with me. And I said, well, you have to understand that your intuition and your feelings and
Yes.
all those things, that's
Yes.
God telling you this probably isn't the right person for you, and you should listen to it. So a lot of times we ignore it, we kind of shove it aside, and we don't pay attention. But you're absolutely right. Finding the perfect doctor to treat, especially your child, not just yourself, is key to healing and success.
Yeah. So if you had one resounding message that you could leave or give, not just from your book, but just in general to anybody going through this, what would it be?
So I always leave people with this message of make sure you get out of your head, move into your heart. And if you leave the rest up to God, then it'll all fall in place. You truly, truly, truly have to set a clear intention and believe that your child can recover, that they could lead a fully functional life. Even though my son may still have autism, he is a fully functioning 17-year-old kid about to graduate that can drive, can take care of himself, can cook. I so say he could clean, but
He's
that's
still
one of the
17 though.
still
So
17. It's just a battle to get him to clean.
yeah.
But and that was my intention for him, is that he wouldn't be this kid who was staring at a wall and couldn't communicate, couldn't function, couldn't do anything. And it was really important for me that he would be able to do those things for himself one day, and he can.
Thank you so much. I think that's such a good message because I do know that is very, very scary for a parent to hear that, or to hear anything about their child at all, but thinking that their child will not have a fully functioning life, I think is probably one of the biggest fears a parent can ever have. And to know that there is hope, and to know that their child can live a fulfilled life. I think especially, 15, 20, 30 years ago, that was not a message that was out there. It wasn't a thing. If your child had autism, there was no option, there was no hope, there was no resource out there for them. And to know that there is now, and that your children can have hope and can have a future, I think is a great message to put out there to the world, to know that you should keep trying, and no matter what you do, believe that your kid can and will succeed in life, for sure.
I agree.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the show. So if people are looking for your book, they can go to where?
So my book is sold pretty much online wherever books are sold. You can go to warriormom.org, and there's a book tab, and it gives you all the different links to different book sites that'll take you directly to it. If anybody ever has read the book and has questions and would like to have a free consultation, I'm open to that. They can contact me at tracy@warriormom.org. And I'm here to be in service to others, and however it is that I can educate them and guide them on their journey, I'm happy to do it to the best of my ability.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. I will have that in the show notes as well. So I'll have the link to warriormom.org, and I will have your email as well. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you as well. You take care.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. We will see you all next week.